The following recording is a production of Kickin' Out at 2 in conjunction with the Retromania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network and is intended for private use only. For more information, head on over to facebook.com/Kickin' Out at 2 or our Twitter handle @Kickin' Out 2, along with searching Retromania with a W on any and all podcast platforms available to listen to archive shows such as this and all the great content of the Retromania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network. Evergreen content at your fingertips anytime at your listening pleasure. And with that being said, we thank you for listening and hope you enjoy the show.
What's up, everyone? Thank you all for pressing play, hitting download, liking, subscribing, rating, and reviewing this podcast known as Kickin' Out at 2. I'm your host, Dave Rosenbluth, and we have a pretty fun show for you today. This was determined by all of you in the polls, as you guys smashed the polls on social media and chose ECW Hardcore Heaven 2000. I just sat down recently, watched it from start to finish, and I will give you my recap and my review of that show shortly. But before we do all of that, head on over to our social media, facebook.com/Kickin' Out at 2. Like us over there, follow us over there, be a part of all the nostalgic wrestling fun that we have over there. Polls, pictures, videos, GIFs, all kinds of stuff. I know the traffic's been a little slow lately over there because my real life is kind of taken over, but hopefully as the months get warmer as we head into the summer, we'll be a little more active on there, as well as our Twitter handle @KickinOut2. All kinds of fun. Same thing over there. Polls, GIFs, videos. Usually I'll go live on the WWE PLE nights, and I will give you my feedback and my comments as the show goes on from match to match and segment to segment. So you can find all kinds of fun stuff over there as well on our Twitter handle, as well as Retromania. That's right. We are part of the Retromania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network. We're still kicking. I know that the other shows haven't really been featured in the regular rotation, but we're slowly getting there to get back to some regular content aside from the show Kicking Out at 2. Cool Truth with AC recently did a WrestleMania preview. You can find that over on the streams, Retromania with a W. This show, Cool Truth with AC, Marking Out the Days, Gaijin Wrestling Radio, Hulkamania is Dead, Origins of Attitude, all evergreen content at your fingertips anytime, any place by liking, subscribing, rating, and reviewing Retromania with a W, as well as you can find it on all podcast platforms available by searching Retromania with a W. All right, before we get into the ECW Hardcore Heaven recap, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the recent passing of ECW legend, pioneer, the suicidal, homicidal, genocidal Sabu had passed away at the age of 60 just last week. I'll be honest with you, I didn't get a lot of Sabu exposure younger when I was growing up as a wrestling fan. It was primarily WWF and WCW that I watched, but I do remember one of the very first times I was introduced to Sabu was in the Apter magazines, the Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazines from Bill Apter, and I would see pictures of him from stuff he was doing in ECW and in Japan. I didn't follow closely, but I would skim through the pages and I would see what he was doing. And then the first time I ever saw him on television, I was at a friend's house. It was a sleepover. I was in junior high, I believe. And it was late at night. We were in his basement. We were just flipping through the channels, trying to figure out what to watch. And we just happened to scroll upon ECW on the Madison Square Garden channel. And we saw, and at the time I didn't know who exactly some of these guys were, but I saw some familiar faces in that particular segment. It was Shane Douglas, who I'd remember as one of the dynamic dudes in WCW, as well as his Dean Douglas character in the WWF, along with Raven, who at the time I didn't know his name was Raven. I just remembered him as Scotty Flamingo. And then Sabu was in the ring, and I'd never seen. It's the first time I ever saw Sabu on television. And then following that is when I got to see a little bit more of Sabu when the WWF brought ECW in for that mini ECW invasion angle. And that was when I got to see a little bit more Sabu. The episode of Raw from the Manhattan Center in February of 1997. Sabu had made an appearance, jumped off the R that was part of the entrance set, RAW. Onto Taz and his crew as they were building towards the barely legal pay-per-view, the very first ECW pay-per-view. And then I got to see a little bit more Sabu as time went on when if I was awake at night and happened to catch ECW. I'll be honest with you, I wasn't the biggest fan of him. I thought he was unique, okay? I will say that. I thought he was very unique, his style, what he brought. Definitely he was emulated by so many others in the years to follow, but I didn't really take to him like a lot of other people had. I don't know what it was. Just wasn't my cup of tea at the time. I'd grown to appreciate him more as time went on and what he sacrificed and what he brought to the industry and his contributions to the industry. But at that time, at a very young age, I didn't really connect with him. I will say, though, during that time period as a teenager, late 90s, during the Monday Night Wars, when ECW was starting to make some noise, along with the WWF and WCW, Sabu was one of the very few guys that during that very early stages of internet wrestling talk and the opinionated wrestling fans being a vocal minority, Sabu was one of those very few guys where you questioned whether the presentation was legit or not, if he was putting on an act as a character, or if this was really an extension of himself. He had a mystique, an aura about him, and I know Taz recently did a tribute on Dynamite. And he had a great quote. He goes, "Sabu was aura before aura was cool," and that is very true. He just had this very unique presence about him that made you question, like this guy, he's really a bad man. He's really a dangerous guy. Like, is he really trying to hurt the people that he's in there with? Even though you knew that wrestling was predetermined and it was scripted, and there was nothing fake about the physical aspect of it by any means, but there was just something about him that made you, he was a throwback. And I guess it was due in part to his relationship with his uncle, the original Sheik, who, for the most part, he lived his gimmick 24/7. You couldn't tell whether he was working you or whether it was, or whether this was legit. And so Sabu kind of had some of those elements to him, from what I recall growing up watching some of the stuff when he was on WWF programming. I got to see a little bit more of him in later years. His time in TNA, I thought he had some really good stuff with Abyss, the barbed wire match at Turning Point 2005. Some of the stuff he did with Samoa Joe and Raven. I really enjoyed Sabu's run in TNA. I thought his presence helped to set TNA apart from the WWE at that time. I thought he was a nice inclusion into their programming. And then later years, when WWE revived the ECW brand, and you saw Sabu make an appearance at the both one-night stands in 2005 and 2006, I really enjoyed his match with John Cena at Vengeance 2006. I didn't think it was going to be a good match, and both styles meshed really well. So, unfortunately, his time had come to an end in the company. He was involved in an arrest with RVD in the summer of 2006, and that just kind of went downhill from there at that point. He competed at WrestleMania in Detroit, and that was the last time I remember seeing him on television. And then over the years, you'd catch him, do some random spots at different indie shows here and there. He was a big part of the Game Changer Wrestling with Brett Lauderdale and Joey Janela. His last match, coincidentally, took place just about over a month and a half ago at WrestleMania weekend in Las Vegas against Joey Janela in a GCW ring for the final time. Like I said, wasn't my cup of tea, but I can honestly say that his contributions are some that don't get talked about enough. He was emulated as much as anybody that brought something unique to the business, and he's one of those guys that I thought deserved his flowers more so than anything else for the sacrifices that he made. The decisions he made outside of the ring, I'm not going to get into that because the man has passed away. Everybody has, goes through things in their life and handles things a certain way, and I'm not going to sit here and get into his transgressions and things that he's done that people may not particularly care for, because that's not my place. But I will say one of the definitely one of the I hate to use this term, but I'm going to use it, one of the pillars of building ECW. If it wasn't for Sabu's involvement in ECW and bringing his style of wrestling to their programming, I don't think ECW would have reached the heights that it did, because he was one of those guys that really set that show and that company apart. You know, you had the Tommy Dreamers and the Sandmans and Shane Douglas and Terry Funk, a big contribution to making ECW a big deal. But Sabu and his style of wrestling really set the tone for what ECW was going to be about. And I think he doesn't get his just due enough. I wish, someday that he gets his rightful place in the Hall of Fame, whether it's the WWE Hall of Fame or the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. Maybe he's even in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. I'm not sure, but definitely a pioneer for an extreme style of wrestling, a hardcore style that helped bring it mainstream and bring it to the States domestically here on a larger scale. So with that being said, I don't know at this time the cause of his death. That hasn't come out yet, but unfortunately at 60 years old, gone way too soon. My condolences go out to the friends and family and the fans of Sabu, and my heart goes out to all of you, and may he rest in peace. The legendary suicidal, homicidal, genocidal Sabu. All right, now let's get into the ECW Hardcore Heaven 2000 recap from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the Eagles Ballroom. This event took place on May the 14th, 2000, Mother's Day to be exact. The show would open with Joel Gertner and Joey Styles in the ring as Gertner would deliver his signature in-ring introduction. Joel, from Milwaukee to Green Bay, all the Wisconsin ladies say that it's the highlight of their day when I shoot my nuts at their face and spray Gertner. I always get a kick out of those. We get an awkward long pause from the announcers as they leave the ring to make their way to the back where the announcer's position is. At the time, as I was watching this, I was wondering if something else was planned for this segment and it didn't take place, or that there was a timing issue changed on the fly. But both Gertner and Styles looked confused as they were leaving up the ramp. Our first match, Balls Mahoney taking on Masato Tanaka. Cyrus would interrupt things before the match could begin as he addresses his issues with Joel Gertner in the broadcast area. Cyrus would run him down and then goad him to do something about it, with Gertner responding, saying, "I should kick your fucking ass," which results in Japanese wrestler Kanamura choking him out from behind. Cyrus then announces he's taking Gertner's place on commentary with Joey Styles. Then the bell rings and we get on to the match. As things start off with some chain wrestling between the two. We get some lockups, some arm drags, some counters, some submission attempts. The match would eventually make its way to the outside with your typical ECW brawling style of wrestling. Tanaka would nail Balls with a running chair shot to the head, followed by a tornado DDT on the ramp. Balls eventually goes for his chair, delivers a few vicious chair shots of his own to Tanaka. Then Balls goes for a few pinfall attempts from those chair shots, but only gets a 2. Balls then steals a few more chairs from the ringside area, brings them into the ring, piles them up onto the center. Tanaka goes up top, Balls stops him, and then goes for the Nutcracker into the chairs, but Tanaka counters with a tornado DDT onto the chairs for a near fall at 2. Balls then hits the Nutcracker with the Nutcracker, which is a modified Michinoku driver, but only gets a 2 count. Tanaka then comes back, nails a Diamond Dust for a 2. Balls ends up fighting back, delivers a Nutcracker onto the chair for a 2 count. Crowd's on their feet for this sequence of moves, showing their respect to the two performers. We get a roaring elbow from Masato Tanaka onto Balls, which only gets him a 2. Then Tanaka grabs Balls' chair, jumps off the top rope, nails Balls in the head, followed by a roaring elbow for the win at 9 minutes and 15 seconds. Post-match, Balls and Tanaka shake hands and embrace. Honestly, I got no complaints about this match. This is a fun little opener between these two guys. Didn't expect much from them. I'm, not a big Balls Mahoney fan, but they kind of delivered their greatest hits while at the same time surprising me with some stuff I didn't expect from them. So, like I said, fun little opener. Backstage, Dawn Marie and Lance Storm are discussing their upcoming match with Justin Credible for the ECW World Heavyweight Championship, followed by Joey Styles and Cyrus at the announcer's desk previewing the world title main event. Our second match of the evening, it's an ECW three-way dance. Simon Diamond, who is accompanied to the ring by Mitch, Prodigy, Prodiget, and the Musketeer, take on Lil Guido, who's accompanied by Big Sal, who also take on Mikey Whipwreck, who's accompanied by the Sinister Minister. Now, there's a lot going on in these ECW three-way dances. We get several near-fall attempts by all three men, a lot of double-team maneuvers. Interesting note, early on in the match, the house lights go out. I'm not sure if the power went out, if somebody turned the lights off by accident, somebody didn't pay the bill, but there's a spotlight that makes its way into the ring, and we still end up seeing the action following all three around. Whipwreck would deliver a plancha over the top rope onto Simon's entourage and Big Sal that manages to keep the crowd into it despite the power outage. First pinfall comes when Whipwreck eliminates Simon Diamond with the Whipper Snapper. It's now down to Mikey Whipwreck and Little Guido. Big Sal, who was already sporting a bandage over the face from a Sinister Minister fireball weeks prior, gets involved, but Whipwreck delivers a fireball to the face, hardly touching him. Followed by Guido coming up from behind to deliver his version of the Unprettier for the win at 7 minutes and 15 seconds. It's a solid three-way. Nothing earth-shattering that we haven't seen before from these type of matches. Backstage, just incredible. The ECW World Heavyweight Champion, Wood Francine, is discussing his upcoming match with his former World Tag Team Championship partner, Lance Storm. Credible would talk about all the sacrifices he's made for others in his career to get to where he is currently as the ECW Champion. Yeah, and Francine, she's in the background stroking the Singapore cane like it's his ding-dong. So that's pretty much the highlight of that promo. Our third match on the card, we would get C.W. Anderson with Lou E. Dangerously, Billy Wiles, and Elektra taking on Kid Cash. Dangerously cuts a promo, but the crowd tells him to shut the fuck up. Then he proceeds to put over Elektra and her natural beauty as the crowd chants to show her tits. He then calls out anyone to try and kick her ass, which brings out Jazz. C.W. Anderson eats a right hand from Jazz, followed by a face plant to Billy Wiles and a side kick to Dangerously. Jazz ends up clearing house. And then makes her way over to Elektra. But she eats a super kick from C.W. Anderson, followed by a vicious spine buster. Kid Cash then runs down to make the save to get things started for this official match. Cash delivers a top rope plancha to the outside, covering the guardrail onto C.W. and Wiles to really set the tone for this match. And then the bell rings. And the bout starts with a series of arm drags, drop kicks, followed by a Hurricane Rana from Cash to Anderson on the outside. Cash takes advantage with a tilt-a-whirl head scissors. Anderson then eventually counters with a spinning powerbomb countered from a Hurricane Rana attempt. Anderson takes control with forearms to the back of the head to slow the pace of the match down. Billy Wiles gets a few shots in on Cash as the referee is distracted by Anderson. And again, this is ECW. I thought there was no rules, but whatever. Anderson would continue his attack with a series of pinfall attempts, only to get the two. Anderson then distracts the referee as Billy Wiles enters, holds Cash up so Dangerously can nail him with his phone, but Cash ducks. Wiles eats the phone. Anderson super kicks Cash for just a two. Follows up by going up top, but I'm sorry here. My spelling on my notes. See, that's why I got to proofread this shit. I'm an idiot. He follows up top. But is countered. Cash would deliver a top rope Hurricane Rana for the win at 5 minutes, 57 seconds. Sorry about that. My spell check on my notes. I need to work on that. Basically, he went up top and Cash delivered a top rope Hurricane Rana for the win. Yeah, this wasn't a bad match. It was a good mixture of styles between both guys. Both guys seemed to have good chemistry with each other as their matches would progress over time in ECW. We got Bill Alfonso, Scotty Anton, formerly known as Scotty Riggs in WCW, and RVD backstage preparing for their match with Jerry Lynn. RVD says he hasn't wrestled in several months stemming from his foot injury, but he does say that he's ready to go. Our fourth match on the card, it's an ECW tag team three-way dance. The Baldies, Angel and DeVito, taking on Nova and Chris Chetti and Danny Doring and Roadkill. This match is basically a car crash, start to finish. Bodies flying everywhere. There's brawling all over. We get double team moves. There's no semblance of order from the referee, but I guess I should expect that from ECW. Some notable moments in the match saw the Baldies double chokeslam Roadkill through two chairs. Grimes from the Baldies enters the match with a guitar and helps Angel eliminate Doring and Roadkill after a guitar shot to the head on Doring for the first pinfall elimination. Roadkill, who has a table set up on the ringside area, puts Grimes on it as he climbs to the top rope and drops a splash through the table onto Grimes. Now it's down to the Baldies against Chris Chetty and Nova. There was a fun spot in the match, I remember. It saw Nova hung upside down in the corner. Angel runs into the corner, but Nova lifts himself up in the corner with his legs still tied to the corner and nails Angel with a cutter, which I thought was pretty impressive. Excuse me. The finish would see Chetty and Nova up top delivering the tidal wave leg drop splash combo for the win at 6 minutes and 32 seconds. Fun match for pretty much what it was. I did feel rushed watching this match, but I guess that's the norm for this era of ECW. The Baldies aren't done post-match as they attack Chetty and Nova until New Jack arrives, leading us to our next impromptu match. New Jack versus Angel. Typical garbage New Jack match. I mean, if you've seen one, you've seen them all. I said that in the last time we reviewed one of these ECW shows. Plunder everywhere. We get a staple gun, a trash can, a fork. Yes, a fork. The Baldies get some color from the forking by New Jack. The action would eventually spill to the outside to the crowd where you can hardly see anything because the cameraman has to fight for his life with all the pimple-faced virgins in the audience. Atlas Security definitely earned their money that night for sure. New Jack set the table up to deliver a predictable balcony dive onto one of the Baldies. Go figure. The action heads back into the ring where New Jack, with the help from Nova and Chris Chetty, nails Angel with a guitar shot to the head. He follows up with a top rope chair dive for the win at 9 minutes even. Again, it was what it was. Just not my cup of tea. We cut to Joey Styles and Cyrus, who explained that during the opening segment with Gertner, the reason for the long pause, which wasn't caught on camera, was a bloody Tommy Dreamer staggering into the building. Styles was revealed he was told in his headset that Dreamer was attacked by Just Incredible. So either production missed shooting this segment, or this was how they intended for it to come across. Either way, it was a big miss. To me, it just sounds like they were covering up for a production mishap. Our sixth match on the card, Steve Corino with Jack Victory taking on Yoshihiro Tajiri. Corino grabs the mic and puts down Tajiri, offering him a spot back in his group. Now, this is very unlike 2025, but he called Tajiri a Jap and a slant-eyed bastard, which I don't condone, by the way. So any of you reading this out there that are of Asian descent, I do not condone this whatsoever. But this was acceptable back in our day. Tajiri refused the offer and kicked Corino in the head to start things off in this match. He would get Corino in the tarantula early on, which eventually leads to the action spilling out on the ramp. Brainbuster suplex to Corino on the ramp by Tajiri, which sounded and looked pretty brutal looking. Corino starts to bleed early on. I don't know how that happened. I don't know how the blood just started pouring, but he's a known bleeder. It would be followed up by a Trio Woe from Tajiri. More kicks and thrusts from Tajiri, followed by another Trio Woe attempt, but broken up by Jack Victory, leading to a super kick from Corino to Tajiri. Corino attempts to use a chair, but is countered with a kick to the face into the chair from Tajiri, who then follows up by bringing a table into the ring, setting it up, and drop-kicking the table into the face of Corino onto the ramp. Corino is just continuing to bleed buckets, as Tajiri delivers a flying top rope double clothesline to Corino and Victory. Corino then delivers a desperate attempt at a backdrop to Tajiri through a table for a 2 count. Corino follows up with a fisherman suplex for a 2 count, then a Northern Light suplex from Corino for another 2 count. Corino sets up a table in the ring, props it in the corner with help from Jack Victory as Tajiri comes back, delivering a kick to the ribs, followed by the octopus stretch on Corino and a green mist to the face of Jack Victory. Tajiri then delivers a series of rapid-fire kicks to Corino, setting him up on the table. He makes his way up top, delivers the double stomp to Corino through the table for the win at 10 minutes and 22 seconds. Post-match, Kanemaru, who choked out Gertner earlier, jumps Tajiri from behind, but Tajiri fights back, only to be a victor of the numbers game again until the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, baby, that's right, it's the clobbering time, baby, enters the ring, dropping bionic elbows to Victory and Kanemaru. Rhino arrives, beats on Dusty until we get the Sandman making his appearance for our next match, and it is for the ECW World Television Championship. It's Rhino defending the World Television Championship against the Sandman. 25 years later, I'll say this. Watching this on Peacock, you get the generic, dubbed in music because Peacock, WWE, they do not have the rights to play Metallica's Enter Sandman. But I will say this. Sandman is on the Mount Rushmore of wrestling entrances in the history of wrestling. His one-night stand entrance with Tommy Dreamer against the Dudley Boys in 2005 is probably one of the greatest entrances in all of wrestling, that particular one. But I've seen some older ECW footage with Sandman stuff, and you could just tell, like, that's another guy that had an aura about him. He wasn't the greatest wrestler, but he made you believe. He made you believe that he was a tough bastard. He made you believe that, he would do anything to win a fight and to fight for what he believed in as a character. And those entrances, man, with the beer and the cigarette and, going through the crowd and, making his opponent wait, or just they're if you go out of your way to Google a Sandman ECW entrance, if you haven't already seen it before, you'll be impressed for sure, and I think you can understand what I'm talking about. Now we just need TKO to pay for the rights to use Metallica's Sandman. It'd be nice if they can have the original audio back on Peacock and not the generic entrance that's dubbed in. I mean, when you watch it, how could you not want to be a part of it in an arena? I mean, I remember watching that one night stand entrance with Dreamer and Sandman when they were taking on the Dudleys, and my God, like, I was like, damn, I wish I was there right now. I wish I was in that building to experience that. It's something about it. Like, it gives you FOMO vibes. You know what I mean? Like, the fear of missing out. You're missing out on something special, being a part of something special. I can't really emphasize it any more than I already have, that his entrance just had an aura about him. And the match finally begins. Both men brawling all over the ringside area, which is something that you would expect from these two. As their rivalry had gotten really personal, with the inclusion of Sandman's wife being assaulted by Rhino on TV a few weeks prior. Rhino sets up a table propped up against the ropes on the ramp, goes for a flying spear, but Sandman moves, and Rhino eats the table. Jack Victory arrives, but is met with a Singapore cane from the Sandman's wife, Lori Fullington. Then Steve Corino grabs Sandman's wife, stops her from getting involved until Rhino gets a hold of her, drags her into the ring, and delivers a pile driver off the ring apron through a table onto the floor. Whew, man. I mean, that's not something that's acceptable in today's day and age, that's for sure. Violence against women, but my God, like, that was one clip that has made it into the highlight reel of ECW over the years since that took place. I mean, and also too, if you think about it, it reminds me of how much of ECW was an all hands on deck type of situation. I mean, to the point where the Sandman, and this is not the first time his wife had gotten involved in an angle. She was involved in the Raven angle, 5-6 years prior when Raven poisoned her and brainwashed her, and she ended up leaving the Sandman for Raven. So this is not the first time she's gotten involved in something like this, but physicality to this level, oh my God, like, it's definitely quite the sight. Then Jack Victory, as if she hasn't had enough, drags her back into the ring, props her up against the table in the ring, but Sandman nails Rhino with the Singapore cane, picks up his wife, but then is met with a gore from Rhino, putting them both through the table in the corner, leading to the victory for Rhino at 6 minutes and 15 seconds. And still, your ECW World TV Champion Rhino, who grabs the mic post-match and yells, "Happy Mother's Day, you fucking bitch." As far as the match goes, I didn't expect a classic between these two, but considering the nature of the storyline, the time allotted was acceptable and appropriate for this match. The physicality, everything involved in it, it was a very personal match. Watching it, you could tell, and it translated well on screen. Our eighth match, Rob Van Dam with Bill Alfonso and Scotty Anton taking on Jerry Lynn. It's a rematch from their classic at the 1999 Hardcore Heaven pay-per-view the previous year. Milwaukee was pretty pumped for this match, eagerly awaiting for them to lock up. These two really didn't disappoint. Even despite the fact Van Dam hadn't wrestled in 3 months after suffering a broken leg. Commentary really questioned his health coming into the match. The crowd was split 50-50 with these two, which made for a fun watch. Lots of counters, chain wrestling early on, with both delivering pretty much all their greatest hits throughout this match. Some notable moments from this match saw Lynn nailing a slingshot somersault plancha to RVD on the outside, in addition to Lynn spiking RVD with a tornado DDT. RVD would deliver a rolling senton splash to Lynn for a 2 count. He would also deliver a skateboard drop kick with a chair to Lynn in the corner, only getting a 2. Van Dam goes for a rolling thunder with the chair, but Lynn counters into a second rope sunset flip onto the chair on RVD. Lynn and RVD later would battle on the apron until Lynn delivers a bulldog to RVD off the apron through a table. Jerry Lynn would then deliver a somersault plancha to the floor, nailing Scotty Anton after RVD moves out of the way. Jerry Lynn goes up top, but he's pushed off by Bill Alfonso, crotching himself on the top rope, which sets up a top turnbuckle Van Daminator to the face with a chair from Rob Van Dam. Van Dam then delivers a 5-star frog splash to Lynn onto a chair as Cyrus would leave the broadcast booth. Carino and Victory arrive. They jump RVD, but Lynn helps fight them off. Then Rhino shows up, gores Jerry Lynn, and powerbombs RVD as Cyrus instructs Rhino to hurt them some more. RVD would nail a Van Daminator, to Cyrus, followed by another Van Daminator to Lynn. Then Scotty Anton out of nowhere pushes RVD off the top rope onto the ramp, turning on his best friend. Lynn would go for the cover, but only get a 2 count. Then he follows up with a cradle pile driver onto the steel chair for the win at 19 minutes, 54 seconds. Despite the convoluted finish, this was a really good match. And honestly, a lot of people don't talk about this match between these two because they talk about their matches that took place a year prior. But this match holds its own, I must say. I didn't have high expectations. I mean, I had expectations this was going to be a good match, but I didn't think it was going to top or come close to the Hardcore Heaven match from 1999, and it certainly did, in my opinion. Our main event, the 9th match, we would see ECW World Champion Justin Credible with Francine taking on Lance Storm with Dawn Marie. Credible would grab the mic and admits that he was the one that attacked Dreamer earlier in the evening because he got unfinished business with Storm. Out comes Tommy Dreamer, but he's stopped by Paul Heyman and other officials from entering the ring, with Credible threatening to disgrace the title as Lance Storm music hits. Storm and Dreamer would face off as Heyman shouts that Credible has the company by the fucking balls, which I'm guessing is probably in reference to Mike Awesome leaving for WCW a month prior while he was still ECW champion. Some more of the 2000s internet wrestling fourth wall style bullshit that was popular back in the day. Dreamer would shake Lance Storm's hand and walk out as Heyman and referees escort him to the back. So it sounds like to me, without them saying it, that this match was originally booked to be Credible taking on Storm and Dreamer in a triple threat, 3-way dance. I mean, I don't know. I mean, he implied that he took out Dreamer because he's got unfinished business with Storm. So Dreamer must have been advertised for the match. But it wasn't something that was really emphasized in commentary during this segment. So I'm just guessing here. I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong. The match begins, and for the most part, this was really nothing special. This was two heels, former partners colliding that just didn't connect with me. Maybe because it followed that great RVD Jerry Lynn match prior. I don't know. Also, this match could have used a little bit more time because I felt like when things started to pick up, the match was over. Even to the point where the crowd was chanting for Tommy Dreamer. So it sounds like this wasn't a popular decision amongst the audience to remove Dreamer from the match. I get it from a storyline standpoint, but at the same time, considering how thin ECW's roster was getting in the months heading towards their demise, maybe Dreamer's inclusion could have helped this match. I don't know. And plus, with Storm leaving for WCW, this was a quick split from these two. There wasn't really any build-up in these two splitting up. It was just everybody knew Lance Storm was leaving for WCW. He had given his notice the right way, and then all of a sudden, boom! They decided to split these two up. I just didn't think that like I said, didn't. I think the quick build-up of that reflected in the way this match played out. If anything, Dreamer probably most definitely would have, his inclusion in the match would have helped it. Some notable moments in the match. Storm would put single leg Boston Crab on Credible, but Francine would attack him from behind, which enters Dawn Marie. Turns into an ECW cat fight. Gets a pretty big pop. Credible delivers That's Incredible tombstone to Dawn Marie, followed by Storm nailing Credible with a Singapore cane and a pile driver, only for a 2 count. Storm follows up with a tombstone, but is countered by Credible with another That's Incredible tombstone, only to get a 2. Both men are staggering on their feet, trading blows, followed by a swinging DDT onto Storm from Credible for a near fall. And in very anticlimactic fashion, Credible delivers That's Incredible to land Storm for the win at 12 minutes and 28 seconds. And still, ECW World Heavyweight Champion Just Incredible. Post-match, we would see the return of Tommy Dreamer as he nails Credible with a Singapore cane. Then he goes for Francine, who's begging him not to. She tries to sweet-talk Dreamer, hands him the title belt. Dreamer then hugs her, only to drop her with a Spicoli Death Valley driver to a big pop and send the crowd home happy for this very underwhelming pay-per-view main event. Like I said, this match wasn't anything special. And that does it. I mean, I didn't really expect the show to be as good as it was, but this wasn't a bad pay-per-view, despite some of the minor hiccups. With the power outage, the production miscue in the opening segment, and then the main event were pretty much the low points of this show. Especially during this time period when the future of the company was in doubt, with the recent news of TNN acquiring the rights to air WWF programming while ECW was still on their network. This was a good effort all around from everyone involved. Not a great pay-per-view, but not bad either. I'd give this a thumbs in the middle. Go check it out on Peacock. I don't think you'll be disappointed, truly. And that does it for this recap here of ECW Hardcore Heaven on Kickin' Out at 2. Thank you all so very much for pressing play, hitting download, liking, subscribing, rating, and reviewing this podcast. You guys are smashing it in the polls. You guys smashed it again. Our next pay-per-view recap is going to be King of the Ring 2000 coming up. But before we do that, I'm hoping to get a watch-along in within the next week or so, maybe, hopefully. Not making any promises, but hoping that Dennis and I can finally link up our schedules and we can get something going. Either a Raw, a SmackDown, a Nitro, a Thunder, an ECW Hardcore TV episode from the year 2000 as we continue this trek from the year 2000, 25 years later, here on Kickin' Out at 2. So with that being said, it's officially about this time to put this one down for the 3 count, and we'll see you all next time.